Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Reiki Women podcasts. My name is Michaela of Heartscapes Reiki. Here with me today, as always, is Bronwen Logan of Reiki with Bronwen and Carrie Varela of the Reiki Healing Society. And we've been working our way through several kind of Ask Us Anything episodes where we're looking at questions that regularly come up within our forum, within other forums that we're a part of, just questions that are commonly asked by Reiki practitioners and Reiki clients that we feel we can give a relatively quick and concise answer to. And so today we're going to be looking at the question of, can you teach children the system of Reiki? Or as it's often phrased when I see this question, can children be attuned to Reiki? Is there any reason not to do that? What might be considerations for that? And we thought that was a great question. So we're going to dive into that today. So friends, where would you like to start? What comes up for you when you hear this question?
I'm just going to answer because I was just saying, please don't think I'm a weirdo, but I've got my old Nana blanket on here because I'm cold. But I don't know if I said that before, but this blanket was given to me when I had my child. Yeah, when my child was born, my auntie crocheted this for me. So it has lovely connections through to thinking about children and life. So can you teach kids? Yep, you can teach kids. I mean, look, it's pretty straightforward. There's different ways of doing it, and I'm sure that people come up with all different ideas. So all we need to do is we need to take into consideration that they are children. And so I'll let someone else talk about this, some of those aspects, but so like safety issues and things like that. But all I really want to say is, yes, we can. And the system of Reiki is there are different elements within the system of Reiki to give us the opportunity to learn in different ways. So kids can learn meditation, kids can chant, kids can receive attunements. Sorry, I rolled my eyes earlier. I thought that was a bit rude. I'm good at that. When you said about being attuned, because it's not just about an attunement, because we already are Reiki. The idea of attuning someone or receiving an attunement, receiving Reiju, however you'd like to put that, is support, energetic support by a teacher. And it is a part of the system, yes. What else? Oh, give kids the precepts. Wow, fantastic. Imagine kids starting off so young with the precepts. Beautiful thing. I think we've talked about this before. I used to hang them I had them in the bathroom, had them, in the fridge. I had them all over the place. For me, but also for the family, so for everybody to get that in their head. Do we need to do formal classes with kids is probably a more concise question, because I think all of us three here, we all have kids, and they've grown up with the system of Reiki, so it's in their ears. I never did a formal class with my kid. My kid sat in on lots of classes, has taken part in lots of classes and retreats, but there was no specific formal thing. And I think that's just us needing structure. If we are already the system of Reiki, then if we are already Reiki, excuse me, then it's what we want to do is foster that in whatever way that we can. Yep. But if it's not your child, for example, if there are other children and you want to teach classes, then I would say go for it. I'm sure you guys here have got some great ideas on what might fit into a class.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in here. I think similar to our last episode on answering the question, should we work on cancer patients? What comes up for me is, why wouldn't we? Like, what is the impetus behind asking the question? And I think for this particular question, is it okay to teach children Reiki or attune children to Reiki? Again, what I've seen a couple of different trains of thought that lead to that question when I kind of dig into the conversation with folks. The first train of thought is the idea that children, being in small bodies and not fully developed minds, are that being attuned to Reiki is somehow too intense for them, that this is like a rush of energy that's going to overwhelm their system, is going to be too much for them. And so therefore you should wait until they're adults. The other thing that often comes up is, is it relevant for them? Is it something that they can kind of handle emotionally, like in terms of their maturity? And so again, similarly to that last conversation, I would have us look at what is our understanding about what is happening within the system of Reiki. If we're looking at Reiki the way that we discuss it here on this podcast, that Reiki is who and what we are. It's our essential self. It's not something that has to be given to us. Attunement isn't the turning on of Reiki or the delivering of Reiki to a person who does not have it yet. It's a ritual that holds a different function. That it's what we already are, then it's what our children already are. And in fact, if we think about it in those terms, the idea being that when we're born, we haven't been distracted and harmed and kind of, deluded by different aspects of living our life in a vulnerable body in a challenging world. And therefore we're closer to kind of being in our fullness, that we haven't forgotten yet that we are Reiki. Developmentally, we look at the fact that, it's up until about 3 years old, a child really doesn't think of themselves as a separate, sovereign entity, but they really are experiencing themselves as connected to the people in their life and to this wider network. And so in that sense, children are well adapted to, take a more conscious approach to being in their own Reiki, right? To bringing forward their own Reiki with some structure. You mentioned structure, Bronwen. When we're talking about learning the system of Reiki, we're talking about putting structure around something that is already true, that we already are this, and we're putting a structure around the conscious remembering of that fact and utilizing it in various ways. So that would be that first one. If somebody is concerned that teaching or attuning a child to Reiki is too intense for them, that doesn't feel true to my experience. It's going to just be themselves. They're already intense in whatever way they are. This is just going to be them, right? So on the other side, right, like, are they emotionally mature enough to deal with it? Now that's, a more practical question. Anything that we're doing with children has to be age appropriate, right? It has to be delivered to them in a package they can understand, that captures their attention, that's interesting to them, that relates, that feels relatable to them, and that is presenting concepts that aren't, well above what they can understand and engage with. And certainly, some level of formality around teaching the system of Reiki. Speaking of Reiki children, hi, friend. Perfect timing. There's certainly, absolutely, the 5 elements of the system of Reiki can be packaged and presented in a way that children of all ages can understand and feel excited about and related to. And particularly with somebody who's gifted with teaching children. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest, that is not me. I've been asked to teach Reiki to children, and I feel very ill-equipped to not talk about it in the overly academic way that I tend to talk. I'm not the best person to work with young children, maybe like in the tweens and teens range, but I'm not the best person to teach, to kind of create age appropriate versions of these teachings for children. But there are many people who are very gifted at that. And, we could go into a lot of detail about what that would look like in each particular element of the system. If folks are interested in going in a deeper dive, a more detailed exploration of how you would communicate the 5 elements of the system of Reiki, specific practices to children, if you would like us to go there, please let us know. We'd be happy to do do a longer, deeper dive on that. But for now, I'll just say, absolutely, this system can be presented to children in a way that's age appropriate. It's exciting for them, and it is not too intense for them. It's just who and what they are. And what does your kiddo think about that, Carrie?
What is my kiddo? I think what this conversation brings up for me is how do we want as parents to bring ideas of spirituality and healing to our children? How much, if any, is that important to you and how you raise your children, and to exactly what your child needs? If a child is, really, you can see that they're looking to connect spiritually or trying to understand life a little bit better, life and death, maybe. Reiki could be a really powerful tool for children to understand spirituality. Certainly been a powerful tool for me to understand spirituality, right? I was born and raised in in spiritual communities where I experienced a lot of spiritual trauma, actually, around being exposed to a lot of stuff that felt like it was a little bit more than I could handle, and spirituality being used as a weapon against me. And so I guess I have a lot of sensitivity towards the thought of just being like, here, yeah, give a Reiki class to a child without thinking about what that might feel like or what that might do for a child. And so first off, I got to say that I know some friends who received Reiki in a more Western mindset of thinking about Reiki as children. And that imparted to them this deep sense that they were different than others, that they were given something that was extraordinary or beyond themselves, that they were connected to Reiki, that they couldn't sever that connection. They felt an immense opening in their own awareness of energy, and spirit guides and things like that. And some of them who experienced that really didn't feel like they had a lot of choice in the matter, and that their parents or whoever introduced that to them, there wasn't the sense of choice. And so I think that that's a foundational thing, is that if your child is looking and seeking these things, and, obviously if it's in our life and it's a big part of our life, that's great, but still, like, bringing the children in a way that they really want to interact with it, rather than using any sort of force or, telling a child that they have to be attuned without their permission. I don't agree with that. I don't think that that's helpful. And I think also, just for myself and others who have kind of experienced spiritual trauma, is to, that it's like this double side of it, because I think that in some ways it imparted somebody this sense that this is what they're supposed to do with their life, that they, really needed to follow a spiritual path. And I know that for me, that was so ingrained in how I was raised. I have to follow a spiritual path. And it left me as an adult feeling like I didn't really have a whole lot of choice. And subconsciously, because there was so many mixed messages and negative messages around not following a spiritual path, that you might go to hell and all of this stuff, there's just a lot of baggage there, I gotta say that. And so when I think about how I want to relate that to my child, it's really about choice, and also that feeling like that they have the freedom to follow their authentic path in life. Here comes my other kid.
That's really meaningful, and it just brings up for me how dangerous some of the things are that we can, how we think and talk to kids, and how our own perverse ideas that we get about the world, how they can affect others. It's actually why I love the system of Reiki, because it does have that beautiful openness. And when people start doing that, like this whole idea of, I could hear exactly what you're saying, Carrie. You know, this thing of like, oh, you're connected to this, and you know, making this happen. That's all the stuff that I don't like
Right.
personally, right? About
Right.
the system of Reiki from a non-traditional perspective, and have never gotten, and it always seems out there and not really grounded. And so yeah, looking at it from a children's perspective, that could be really damaging. And I think, you know, in that sense, I think if you were to send your kid to a Reiki class, that you would really want to know what it is that they're going to be teaching in that class, and if that feels.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful to Carrie for bringing up that perspective. And I realized that, like, to me, it was like there were two things that kind of in my mind were like, it goes without saying, but actually need to be said. And so I'm really grateful, Carrie, that you said that, you know, and the first was that idea of consent and interest, right? Like, is the child even interested? Like, this topic shouldn't even come up if the child is not like themselves seeking it. I have two daughters. Neither one of them have any interest in learning the system of Reiki, like zero. The way they don't even have any interest in receiving Reiki sessions formally. The way that Reiki is active in their life is the way that I show up as their parent. And, you know, moments of distress when I might guide them into some breathing or something like that. But it's really more of a way of being than it is something formal for them. They're not interested. So that's not something that I've ever, you know, pushed onto them. But even, you know, a child who is interested, I think, Carrie, to your point, like the content of what we are teaching matters tremendously. And the, you know, when you started to describe the experience that your friends had, I was like, yeah, I can totally see how kind of putting that mindset in as a young child could really have some serious reverberations. And I think the reason it kind of went without saying in my mind was that the way that we work with Reiki, the way that I work with it, is not that, right? It's this idea of coming back to who we are, coming back into alignment with life. And so it's such a softer perspective. Now, that said, you know, we have a unique worldview in my family. And recently my kid, who's about to be 13, I can't believe it, that my youngest is about to be 13. She said to me something like, Mom, we have kind of a different way of seeing things in our family than other people, don't we? And it was like, this had just occurred to her. Like, she had just somehow kind of realized that we kind of see things a little different than a lot of other people. And so it was like, to me, that was a gentle, like, she's in this container with a worldview. It's gentle, it's open. And it's different than other people that are around her, as opposed to this explicit messaging, like you were describing, Carrie, of like, this is going to change you. We're going to do this ceremony, and then you're going to be different, and you're going to be connected to this thing, and other people are not. And, you know, that whole narrative, I can absolutely see how that would be super hard for a young person to grow up with that perspective. Yeah, super interesting. Anything else that comes up for either of you around this topic? We might want to do a deeper dive on this at some point. It just feels like it.
Deeper dive is how the languaging we're using in Reiki leads one to spiritual narcissism. That's, I think, a very interesting topic, and one that hits home for me with this whole conversation. But you know, in terms of just like, I think that Reiki in and of itself, like, these are all just these social norms and constructs. But does Reiki do that harm? No, I don't think so. And so, you know, in my household, Reiki is a part of it. Everybody's getting Reiki. It's, you know, it's a huge part of who, you know, we are. And I'm not afraid of, you know, bringing this spirituality to my children. But I think for me and my background, it's just the consent piece is just such a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Well, I love this conversation. I think it's a really important one. I'd love to hear what you, dear listener, think about that. What's come up for you around this question of the interaction between children and the system of Reiki, your experiences and thoughts on that. If you have other questions you'd like us to see addressed in some of these shorter discussions, please do share them with us. We love being in that kind of dialogue with you as our listeners, as our community. And we will be back again soon with another conversation. So, ladies, thank you once again for being in this ongoing discussion. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. And until next time, we love you.
Bye.